Regulation G is a little over a week old on the Pokemon Showdown ladder, and today we're going to be looking at arguably the 5 best restricted legendaries currently up to this point in the metagame. Now, for anyone who doesn't know, Limitless hosts a bunch of tournaments here over on the website. So basically, I've gone through this, I've cycled through, I've had a look at, a lot of Pokemon that are doing good, looked at what they're kind of running and whatnot, just so I can kind of give you guys a brief idea, essentially of, what is good right now, what is getting the results, right? A good example here is obviously we have the Wide League Tour here. As you guys can see, 77 players. If you guys haven't also used this website before, make sure you check it out. It's like fantastic. It's really, really good for seeing like what people are running. You can look here for both Reg G and F. It's really, really nice, yeah. But if we click here to have a look at the at the Wide League Tour here, we see here Terapagos wins. The homie Mario here came in second with the Calyrex-Shadow rider, so on and so forth, right? That's a bunch of different tournaments. Normally for me, I always look at tournaments with at least normally 30 plus players, because sometimes some of the small tournaments can be a little, little skewed, right? Because there's a lot less players. You don't know, how many quality players are in those events. But when you do have bigger tournaments like this, where you have 77 players, players do have to be much more consistent in order to reach the top, right? Especially have a look here, Grayson is 10-1 with this Terapagos team. And Grayson too has actually been like dominating the format. I think like this is like the second or third big event I've actually seen him win so far. But look, some other really good players here as well. We see Sableye VGC, Ryan here running Lunala and so on and so forth, right? So there's a lot of good Pokemon right now. So which Pokemon do I think are arguably the best? So the first one here I'm going to start with is actually a bit of a shock to me. This is a Pokemon that has been getting, quite a bit of result, especially in the last couple of days, as people kind of slowly start figuring out why it's so good. And that here is Zamazenta. Now, obviously, everyone knows back in Regulation F, back in Sword and Shield, Zacian here was king. But Zamazenta right now in this single restricted format is putting up some incredibly good results. And honestly, the mon just keeps getting better. So when we have a look at this mon, you got to kind of like ask yourself, what does it do, right? The main thing Zamazenta really has going for it is this right here. This absurdly high physical defense stat, paired up with access to body press and iron defense. So I'm sure most of you already actually know how this Pokemon's ability works, but essentially when it switches in the Rusted Shield, being in the crown form, it gets +1 to its defense stat, right? So you can imagine already, not invested, this guy, comes in turn 1, he has 240 physical defense, right? Which is actually insane, especially when you factor in the fact that, he has a stab body press here. But then again, it really doesn't take much. You can just invest something like this here, go with a bold nature here, minus special attack. You could even invest a bit of speed into this as well, which I do think is probably pretty good. And then all of a sudden, this physical defense stat becomes absolutely insane. Then on top of that, you add in the fact that it also has iron defense. And again, even if you were to get rid of just this ability here, giving +2 to this stat, all of a sudden you're sitting at 370 physical defense with a stab body press, which is absolutely insane, right? It also has access to an incredibly good stab move in Behemoth Bash. And honestly, this Pokemon's attack stat is honestly pretty good. It's the same as, Ogerpon, as the Ogerpon form. So even with not much investment, a base 100 move with no drawback is obviously very, very good. But honestly, it gets better. It also has access to Wide Guard, which I do think is obviously incredibly good right now, especially with, the likes of Calyrex-Shadow running around. But this Pokemon, it does have some other pretty good options, especially on the support end. I do think this is definitely the best set of 4 to run, but there are other sets you could run, right? This Pokemon also gets access to coaching, which is pretty nice, obviously. As it is, a pretty fast Pokemon. 128 is not bad. With a bit of speed investment, you can definitely outspeed some of your allies. Also has access to things like Howl as well, which again, with, this physical attack stat, and some good partners with a bit of speed, Howl can also pop off. And then also has access to Helping Hand. So it can be used as a pretty decent support for, setting up your allies. If you do say, instead of going for something like Body Press Iron Defense, you go for one of these potential moves to help set up, whether that be Coaching, Howl, Helping Hand. And then, you can slap on a different physical move here. And then, you can kind of run it quick and, really buff up its allies. But I definitely do think this is probably the best set of 4 on it. In terms of Terras, Terra Water has definitely been the most consistent from what I can see. Especially in the early format, right? Terra Water is just incredibly good defensive typing, right? It's really nice. You're only weak to electric and grass, which, Zamazenta doesn't really care about electric types as it is. And realistically, the only big electric types you have to worry about are things like Raging Bolt and Miraidon. And even then, you've got other ways around it, right? At that stage, you're probably just staying in your base form with your steel typing anyway. But yeah, very, very good Pokemon. But let's have a look at some of the partners I think are actually really good with this Pokemon. And to start it off, there's in my opinion, there's 2 different ways to play this Pokemon, and that's the beauty of it, right? Because you can pair up a core around it. The first one is my goal for this game is to get off my Iron Defense Body Press stuff, right? So how do we do that? Everyone's favorite combo, it's Rillaboom Incin, right? These two just come in, Zamazenta is a fantastic attacker because it doesn't care about Intimidate, right? This is it's not a special attacker, but it also really doesn't care about Intimidate. outside of like, you know, having Flutter Mane in front of it. But again, there's different ways around Flutter Mane, especially like an Assault versus Rillaboom here. But these two guys here, obviously, you got Fake Out, right? And, you know, you've got the Grassy Terrain, which obviously helps heal you up. And then, of course, you got Intimidate, Fake Out, Parting Shot, right? It's the good old Incineroar combo, right? You pair these three guys together, and it's just, it really allows the Zamazenta to kind of, you know, set up, and then at that point, it can just sweep through. But obviously, this team, you know, or at least this core in particular, it can have big issues with things like Calyrex-Shadow, right? Especially if the Cali does have some support. And that's why we've seen some very, very common partners with it, being things like the Chien-Pao and the Flutter Mane. These two are, like, really, really good with it, because essentially, like, the way it works, right, if you go up against the Calyrex-Shadow Rider, right, all of a sudden, Zamazenta's job is not to carry this game, it's to protect the two, you know, these two here, right? So you can leave them together, spam out your Wide Guard so they can't Astral Barrage. Then you have your Dark type saying, like, okay, like, what do you have for me as I go for things like Throat Chop? Because, again, I think, like, Chien-Pao right now, by the way, you probably drop Sacred Sword on this Pokemon. You definitely want 2 Dark moves. You either go, like, Ice Spinner, Ice Shard, Ice Spinner or Icicle Crash, whichever one you would prefer. Throat Chop's really cool, but I'm also actually a big fan of Lash Out as well on this Pokemon. I think that's pretty nice. And then Flutter Mane, I think, right now does always have to be Speed Booster. But really what you need to consider is, like, what is this Pokemon's role on your team? Obviously, it's going to be different on every team. But I definitely think at least what you need to have, especially on the Speed Booster set, is something like this, right? So you get the Moonblast, Icy Wind, and Shadow Ball. Shadow Ball's definitely, you know, mandatory at this point just because of the Calyrex-Shadow Rider. And I also think going Terra Fairy is also mandatory just so you don't, you know, fold to the Astral Barrages. Now, one thing I will throw out there, that's also terrifying, Scott. One thing I'll throw out there is I do actually think that Terra Stella technically is really good on these Speed Booster sets right now. In every matchup but Calyrex-Shadow. The reason for that is this Pokemon, like with this bulk here, always lives the Astral Barrage. Which even then, like, you don't need this bulk to live it. It's just chances are you're always going to have this split anyway. But yeah, so like as long as you Terra, you'll always live an Astral Barrage, even off like a Specs Cali, as long as they obviously haven't set up or got things like Helping Hand Boost. But yeah, obviously Flutter Mane is like really, really good in that regard. But I do think this like core of 5 plus like whatever really you want to kind of throw onto it's really, really good. Obviously we are missing a water type here, so I could definitely see a world where either Urshifu or what's his name? Urshifu or Ogerpon Wellspring both fit in really, really well here. Of course, they both pair incredibly well with Insane Rillaboom, and they're also both really good with Chien-Pao and Flutter Mane as well. So yeah, that's like a really, really strong core. And honestly, Zamazenta is a Pokemon where, like, I can't believe how good this thing is. Like, I actually, unironically, think it's a lot better than Zacian right now. And yeah, because I also think, like, the nerf to the abilities really doesn't affect Zamazenta as much as it does Zacian. Zacian, like, not being able to pivot around, like, through Intimidates, like, really, really sucks for it. Where Zamazenta doesn't care. He's like, hey, I'm just going to get up the Iron Defense Body Press anyway and then sweep through with Body Press. But yeah, Zamazenta, really, really cool mon. And yeah, definitely try it out. I'll hopefully, I might even, like, hit up Will Tank in the coming days and see if I can grab one of his spreads, or one of his teams, sorry, because I know he's been playing quite a bit of the old Zamazenta. So yeah, if I can get some pointers from him, that'd be fantastic. So the next Pokemon we're going to talk about here is Calyrex-Shadow Rider. Now, I have actually done a video in the past couple of days, basically going over how to play this Pokemon and, you know, what Pokemon partners are great for it and whatnot. But it really does feel wrong to not have this in a top 5 Legends. Honestly, maybe could have left it out. But regardless, we are here. Calyrex-Shadow Rider, at this point, I feel like everyone kind of knows what it does. Grim Neigh plus Astral Barrage is broken. Obviously, we talked a lot about it when we were talking about Zamazenta. Yeah, definitely probably the most broken Pokemon in the game. Most broken Pokemon ever created. The meta will warp around this Pokemon, and of course, that's why we talk about things like Wide Guard on Zamazenta being super duper good, right? But Calyrex-Shadow Rider, let's talk about this, because this one obviously has different terrors and different items it wants to hold. I'll throw it out there to start. I think the 2 best sets right now are either Choice Specs or Focus Sash. The Choice Specs, fantastic. Focus Sash, also fantastic. If you're running Focus Sash, definitely have Protect in your last slot. If you're running Choice Specs, you can honestly still run Protect in the last slot because of Knockoff, sorry. Because obviously you can get your specs knocked off. And honestly, like the 4th slot on the Choice Spec set does feel really, really interesting. I think it's either Protect or Trick. I really don't think you need that 4th move unless you really want to like go for like mega coverage. Because one thing I will say, regardless of the set, I think Shadow Ball is too good. I know people are definitely dropping Shadow Ball for other options, but personally, I think having Shadow Ball into a lot of Wide Guard Pokemon is like super good on this Pokemon, right? Because like the last thing you want it to do is like lose a game because your opponent just sits there spamming Wide Guard and like you can't attack him, or like your only attacking option is something like Draining Kiss, which I still do think Draining Kiss is really, really nice. But again, I'm just a huge fan of going for the Shadow Balls of the Draining Kiss. Now we will quickly like touch on other moves for this Pokemon that are very good. Obviously, we have Expanding Force here. If you're pairing this up with Indeedee, I think it's very, very good. But of course, options like Psyshock and Psychic are both really, really good. Psychic's a bit more damage, but Psyshock obviously hitting things on the physical end is very, very nice, especially into Pokemon like Fluttermane. It can definitely make a big, it makes a bit of a difference, right? Because obviously a lot of the time they're going to tear it out of their weakness to the Astral Barrage, and then you can just use the Psyshock to pick up the KO there, which is definitely very, very nice. But yeah, some of the other options here for the, for the utility, of course, you have things like Dark Pulse, which I actually don't think Terra Dark Pulse is that bad. It's like pretty nice for the mirror. But the other option too is Terra Blast, at least on the special end. Now, because of that, I will quickly touch on the Terras I think are really, really good. I'm personally a massive fan of Terra Normal. Giving yourself an immunity in the mirror is very, very nice. I think it's incredibly good. There is obviously the option of Terra Fairy as well. Terra Fairy is just a really good neutral defensive typing. Gives you, instead of, 4x weakness to something like Dark, it now just gives you a just a neutral attack, sorry, a resistance to Dark, which I do think is like very, very good. But some of the other Terras as well, we kind of touched on it. I think Terra Dark is not too bad. Terra Ghost is the other one that's been really picking up recently. And the reason for that is because if your opponent does not have answers to the Calyrex-Shadow Rider, Terra Ghost choice specs will just run through. And like, especially now that we're in the open team sheet era, it's very easy to like look at a team and be like, oh, my opponent literally has 0 answers to a choice specs Terra Ghost Calyrex-Shadow. Then you can just lead it and just start spamming Astral Barrages. And yeah, like that's super duper good. I guess some of the other stuff we'll talk about here as well is just the other moves that can opt to run. I did not mean to put Trick there. Oh my god. Oh god. What have I done? It's just ruined, isn't it? Yeah, we'll just go there. Bang. Yeah, so some of the other options are Nasty Plot is a really nice one. I think Plot, especially on like Focus Sash sets, honestly, isn't too bad. Something else as well I do think is like definitely interesting to look at is Will-O-Wisp. Will-O-Wisp is really good, especially on like some bulkier sets, because again, Sucker Punch is going to be a massive pain in the ass for this mon. Like, if you feel like you can't Terra this Pokemon, Sucker Punch can obviously deal massive damage. And of course, like, leading things like Will-O-Wisp and just straight up burning something like an Urshi, Chien-Pao, whatever it may be, I do think is very, very good. It has other options as well, things like Taunt as well, which I do think is definitely worth looking at. But yeah, this Pokemon does have a pretty deep bag. There are other, it also has access to things like Sub as well, which I definitely think is, like, worth mentioning. Because like you can always pair this thing up with like Sub plus like a Rillaboom and just go like lefties, right? Which I think is not bad. Also, I guess because while we're at it, we spoke about Plot. It also gets Calm Mind. I don't think you guys should be going Plot or Calm Mind if I'm being honest. I do think Specs or Sash plus like 3 attack is probably just the way to play it right now. But I thought I'd just mention them at least because they are, there are a few different options you can run, right? Was there any Terras I forgot to mention? I'm pretty sure like that's it. Oh, Terra Fighting Terra Blast is the other one I kind of forgot to mention as well. This Pokemon does definitely have issues dealing with dark types. And choice specs as well. Like if you go like a specs Terra Fighting Terra Blast, you can deal a ridiculous amount of damage to a lot of the dark types in the metagame. And also with Helping Hand, you can like one-shot things like Incineroar, which I do think is like really, really good. So yeah, because of that, I think Calyrex-Shadow Rider like probably the most broken Pokemon in the format, right? In terms of EVs, I mean, honestly, there's so much you can do with these spreads. Like I've said it before, I'll say it again. Because we're early format, something like this is probably what I would recommend. I know guys like Neil have put out spreads with bulkier sets. Well, I'll actually be showcasing Mario's team as well from the Wide League Tour. This one right here. I'll be showcasing this in the coming days. He's actually he's made his spreads public and he's a good friend. So I've already had a chat to him. He said I can use the team. Shout out to Mario. I did actually also share out one of his videos yesterday. But yeah, I'll be testing out this team. As you guys can see, here's a choice spec set with Astral Barrage, Draining Kiss, and Psyshock. And obviously Protect with on this team as well. So that's definitely really cool. And yeah, I think he does run a bit of a bulkier Calyrex-Shadow, so you'll be able to check out one of those spreads as well. But yeah, honestly, I'm not going to recommend anything outside of this right now, just because we have to wait and see how things develop. But some of the better partners for it, obviously, we talk about things like Expanding Force, because of that, Indeedee is just like really good. Also, Calyrex is so fast, it really doesn't like dealing with Trick Room, which is definitely something I think like you need to keep in mind, right? Like this Pokemon, it does not want to go into Trick Room. It's the fastest Pokemon in the metagame outside of Regieleki. Because of that, it does not want Trick Room. Because of that, things like Follow Me, obviously the Psychic Terrain coming out of here, and then having just like your own Trick Room option, and potentially an Imprison option as well, I do think is very, very good. So yeah, definitely something worth keeping in mind. And of course, speaking of like speed control with Trick Room, Tailwind is really good. Both Tornadus and Whimsicott right now are both like filling like that role really, really well. I do think Tornadus' stocks aren't as high as it was in previous formats. We're in a metagame with restricted Pokemon now. Because of that, you don't necessarily need things like Tornadus to deal as much damage with its Bleakwind Storms. Especially too when it's kind of sitting next to a Calyrex-Shadow and its job is to support it rather than, also deal a bit of damage itself. But yeah, Tailwind is like obviously really, really good. Also Icy Wind, you know, things like Scary Face as well are all pretty good coming out of the Tornadus. Whimsicott, very, very similar situation, right? It gets Tailwind, right? It also gets Cotton Spore, which is like really, really interesting. Both of these Pokemon also have access to weather. I think that's something worth mentioning. Rain Dance on Tornadus can be very, very good into some of the Groudon teams that are running around. And of course, Whimsicott, while it is only Sunny Day, there is, you know, a couple of partners I think Calyrex loves to play with that also benefit from the Sunny Day. Now, with Speed Control out of the way, some of the other supports Cali really liked is something like Mienshao. Mienshao is really, really good for a lot of reasons. One, it's an inner focus mon, so it's really good up against Incineroar, which is one of the better mons in like into your Pokemon. Not to mention you're a fighting type with access to close combat, which is like very, very good. Because again, talking about Incineroar, there's no Terra type Incin has that can allow it to live the close combat into Astral Barrage combo. It's also a fake out Pokemon. It has Wide Guard. And it also has Feint. It has a lot of really good support options that pair incredibly well with Calyrex-Shadow Rider. It's also a very good natural Focus Sash holder. But if you do want to go for Focus Sash on your Cali, it is also actually a pretty good Life Orb Pokemon as well. Again, because it can't be intimidated and it has a pretty good attack stat. If you go like a Jolly Nature, this one can like really pump out some damage, which is pretty cool. In all honesty though, if you are going to run this, like this is actually probably the ideal way of running it. If you want to go like maximum efficiency, just dropping down the 8 IVs there so you get to 39. Just to save yourself 1 point every time you click any one of these moves. But yeah, like Mienshao is like an incredibly good partner with it. We kind of touched on it a bit with like, I didn't really actually touch on it with Indeedee, but Indeedee and Farafrig are both really good for priority block. Again, we talk about things like Sucker Punch dealing like massive damage to Calyrex, you know, even things like Aqua Jets coming in to pick it up in the late game, because like this one has decent bulk, but it isn't anything too crazy. So having the option to like kind of like snipe it in the late game with some priority moves definitely is one of the better ways to deal with it, especially if you have chipped it down with something like an Incineroar. What else? Dark types are probably like the other major thing I'll touch on here as well. Obviously, when you're a Ghost Psychic type, you do want a Dark type, not only one as like a defensive pivot, but also two that just helps you deal with like things like opposing Calyrex. And two of the better options, in my opinion, are Urshifu Dark and, of course, my guy, Chi-Yu. Now, both of these mons, honestly, are pretty decent Choice Scarf Pokemon in this format. For anyone who doesn't know, an Urshifu with this exact spread here with the Choice Scarf is exactly 1 point faster than max speed Cali. Like this Cali hits 222, and this here will hit 223. And I'm a big fan of going modest Chi-Yu. I run mine like this with Choice Scarf, and this allows you to hit 224, I believe it is. Oh no, be 225, be 225. And yeah, like again, this thing has access to Dark Balls, which is like really, really good. If you're going up against a redirection, like say they lead in DD plus Cali, you've also got options like what's it called, Snarl, which is like really, really good, right? If they're gonna like redirect you and you can just sit there and spam Snarl, doesn't matter if they like defensive terror, if you can slow down this mon's like ability to like steamroll, it's really, really good. And of course they pair incredibly well together, right? It makes the mirror much easier, but also Beads of Ruin next to like this special attack stat is kind of nutty. And not to mention, I think Choice Scarf is really good because this is a Pokemon that definitely wants to hold the choice specs. But Urshifu, very similar to what we just said, right? It's got Wicked Blow, it's got Sucker Punch. It's a very good Choice Scarf Pokemon, but I do think the Focus Sash is better on it. But yeah, just two incredibly good Pokemon when paired up with the Cali. So now I quickly want to touch on Terapagos. Now, the reason I'm going to quickly touch on Terapagos is because there really isn't that much to say about it. The sets are pretty simple, right? I think you always want Terra Stellar. Sorry, Terra Starstorm. It has to be Terra Stellar. Calm Mind is very, very good, and Protect is very, very good. I will say, I said you always want to be these moves. That's technically a lie, because I think there's a world where choice specs with speed control is good. I just haven't tested it, nor have I actually seen it really do too much just yet. But the last move here, I think you almost always want Earth Power, but the beauty of Terapagos is being that it's a normal type and it's a legendary Pokemon, this shit's bag is so deep. Look at this. Look at all these attacks, dude. Like, it is actually insane how much coverage this gets. But the reason I go for Earth Power is simply because there are some games where you can't Terra this one. I don't know why it's not allowing me to click Earth Power there. Yeah, there are some games where you don't want to Terra this Pokemon, and you don't want to be stuck in this situation where you can't hit Steel or Rock types. And because of that, or even Ghost types as well. And because of that, Earth Power hits two of them for super effective and just allows you to hit the Ghost types. It's definitely the best coverage option on this Pokemon. And yeah, I think it's like really, really good. In terms of items, there are two, right? So I think Covet Cloak is really good because I do think Snarl Spam is going to continue to pick up in the metagame. And yeah, if you go up against Terapagos, especially as a restricted legendary, like if this thing has to click Calm Minds to deal damage, it feels really, really bad to get snarled, and because of that, I think Covet Cloak's really good. But if you're not too worried about it, like maybe you're pairing it with a Defiant Pokemon or something, Leftovers is another very, very good option. And the reason for that is because The way I personally look at Terapagos, and again, I will actually have a video later in this week with a team built around Terapagos that I'll be doing a video on, running some battles and whatnot. I call the strategy Protect the King. Why? Because our good friends Rillaboom and Incineroar are just like, hey, we're gonna enable you to click as many Calm Minds as possible before you eventually sweep through. Normally, like, you get to like 2 Calm Minds, then you click Terra, and then you start running through, right? These two here, incredible, right? Again, we spoke about it before. Grassy Surge plus Fake Out. Obviously, it has access to U-Turn as well for pivoting. And then, of course, Incin, he's like, hey, I'm Intimidate guy. I got Fake Out as well, and I got Parting Shot, right? The whole idea is just protect the king. Protect Terapagos while these two, while it sets up, right? These two are just really, really good at it. Obviously, another really, really good partner that I don't know if too many people have actually, seen recently. But it's Comfey. I'll talk about it here again because I really think this Pokemon's really, really good. At least paired up with Terapagos. You go for the Triage here, of course, and then you just got Floral Healing and Draining Kiss. Draining Kiss is really, really nice because one of the best ways to deal with Terapagos are things like the Urshifus. They're both really, really good into it. And because of that, they can deal massive damage, and a lot of the time they'll normally live at least one Terra Starstorm, especially if their if their Focus Sash. So having the Comfey here to heal you up with Floral Healing and also potentially snipe really low opponents with the Draining Kiss is really, really good. I'll quickly give you guys this because I think this is the optimal way to run the Pokemon. Just because you get into this it's perfect, right? 143 max HP, and you're hitting bumps on the defense. I think it's really, really nice. But yeah, Comfey is really, really good. It also has a Trick Room option as well. Having Trick Room is really good because Terapagos is a Pokemon with very middling stats here. If we pull up the big form of it, you'll see here. Its speed stat's not bad. You can run this. I definitely think you want a bit of speed on your Terapagos. I normally run around 112 to 114. But yeah, its speed stat's nothing too crazy. So if you got going up against really hyper offensive teams, Comfey can get up a Trick Room and it's really, really nice. And then you can sweep through under Trick Room. And yeah, that's really, really good. And then from there, it's honestly, as I said, it's kind of just Protect the King. It's pieces that allow this Pokemon to do what it wants, right? Pokemon like Ogerpon Wellspring is really good. Again, it allows you to finish off a Fire Water Grass Core while also giving you redirection with Follow Me. And then there are other Pokemon as well that I think are pretty good. Are the Screens Pokemon, things like Grimmsnarl. We've even seen some Sableye, I think, earlier on in the format get some results as well. With things just like Light Clay, and then just Reflect and Light Screen, and Parting Shot. And one thing I'll throw out there, again, with the dominance of Calyrex-Shadow, Grimmsnarl is really good. Being a dark type that has Light Screen and Parting Shot and relatively okay for def, this Pokemon is definitely very, very good into Calyrex-Shadow. And I definitely think it's a one you guys should definitely consider, especially too because it also gets access to Stab Sucker Punch, so you can potentially snipe them if they're not ready for it. Which is definitely something I've lost to in the past, where I look at this thing, I'm oh, it's just gonna click screens, and then it one taps me with the Sucker Punch, and it feels goddamn bad, man. I actually just realized I forgot to do some EVs, so I'll quickly throw these on here. As I said, I like to go up around 112. If the speed creep walls become kind of annoying, 114 is also not too bad. For special attack, I normally like to just hit this bump here, go 196, and then just dump the rest into HP. I also don't like odd numbers, so I would just go something like this. I think this is completely fine. But realistically, it doesn't matter too much because this Pokemon's HP and defensive stats are already so insane. So really, you just kind of want to get as much special attack as possible, and then kind of just start setting it with Calm Minds. But yeah, Terapagos, man, this is it's a pretty saucy one, I'm not gonna lie. So next Pokemon on the list here is Lunala. Now this is a Pokemon that has been getting quite a good some pretty good results, I'm not gonna lie. Which is definitely interesting because it is the exact same typing as Calyrex. So to have two restricted Pokemon being so good with the exact same typing, that also feel very different roles, is very, very interesting. So I will say, I think the best way right now to run Lunala is the Power Herb stuff. So for anyone who doesn't understand, I guess what it is, Power Herb means any move that, normally takes a turn to charge, then hit things like, for example, Solar Beam, makes him go off the first turn, right? Lunala also has access to this beautiful move called Meteor Beam, meaning when you click it, you get +1 to your special attack stat, which is very, very nice, right? Very, very good on this Pokemon. It also gets a very good signature move here in Moongeist Beam, 100-100, and it ignores the opponent's ability, which is definitely pretty pog, right? Which I'm really interested now how +1 into Moongeist does against things like Unaware on Dondoza now. That's actually really interesting. I'm not too sure how that would function, but it definitely makes me think now. But the other two moves that really Lunala likes to run are things like Trick Room and Wide Guard. As we said earlier when talking about Zamazenta, Wide Guard is just really, really good right now. It's just it's honestly fantastic. But like one of the crazy things about Lunala is this one has like really, really good coverage, right? It has a lot of like good support moves as well. I think one of the better like Terras definitely is Terra Fairy. Terra Normal also sees a little play just because of like the matchup into Calyrex-Shadow. But Terra Fairy is a good option, especially with things like Moonblast as well. If you can opt to like fit it into your team at least, Moonblast is like really, really good. But look, you can have a look at some of the other special options it has. Like it honestly has some decent options. Like it has pretty good moves, right? If you have a look here, right, you get things like, what would we consider here? Ice Beam's not bad. Psychic is like okay for a stab move. I think it gets it gets Expanding Force, so you could potentially run it on like a Trick Room Side Spam team. Gleam's pretty good. Having access to things. Actually, you would never run Shadow Ball over Moon, guys. What am I talking about? It also gets like Icy Wind, Hex. Like it gets some like decent options there, right? If you want to like run something for coverage. But it also gets some like pretty good status moves as well. Right? When you have a look at these things, like I'm pretty sure it gets things like Will-O-Wisp, Trick, Will-O-Wisp. Yup, like get some good options here. Even Hypnosis if you're kind of crazy. It gets like Rain if you're really worried about things like Groudon. Even Psych Up as well to like steal some stats is kind of interesting. Moonlight's pretty good for healing. It gets Calm Mind to set up, Helping Hand. Yeah, I think you kind of get it. Lunala has like a lot of really, really good options to kind of enable it just to be like, you know, a pretty good Pokemon. But for this here, I'm just going to put Trick Room because I do think Trick Room is like almost always wanted on this one. Because again, when you look at the stats, like this is a Pokemon where you just put 4 into speed on a Trick Room set. And you're like, hey, against like some balanced teams, you know, I can outspeed, you know, some of their mons. But if you're up against HO, then just getting up the Trick Room can like really allow this Pokemon to sweep, right? Again, this is a mon where it really just wants to max out its special attack, in my opinion. If you want something like this is like really, really good. But even then, like you can run bulkier sets. Like I'm pretty sure Ryan, Sableye VGC for anyone who doesn't know, he actually put out a video with his team where he was like 100 modest. And I think there was like some calc like this he had where it was like something crazy. It was like this allowed it to live like something ridiculous that it shouldn't be able to live. I forget exactly what it was. Go check out Ryan if you're interested. But yeah, there was some specific calc where it was like some dark type move. It might have even been a Wicked Blow. Like I think this might live Focus Sash Wicked Blow because of Shadow Shield. Which I probably should have mentioned, by the way. If your Pokemon's like full HP, damage taken is halved. So like when you have something like Wicked Blow doing 4x damage, it does like obviously a stupid amount of damage to you. And it was something like this spread allowed it to live, which I did think was like really, really cool. And again, with like things like Trick Room, you know, you can have a spread like this, super bulky, get up your Trick Room, get off your Meteor Beam, and then really start sweeping through. Because like getting +1 to this and then spamming out like a base 100 no drawback ghost move is actually pretty insane. In terms of partners for this Pokemon though, I do think there's a lot, right? Obviously, everyone's best friend in this format. Like I know I've been saying this in a lot of the videos, guys. It pains me to say this, but like in restricted formats, Rilla Instant is just stupid. It's stupid good. It really is. This combo is like double fake out, grassy terrain, intimidate. It feels too good, and like in opposing balance matchups, if your opponent has these pieces and you don't, the game feels like really, really hard. I'm not gonna lie. I also think Lunala pairs incredibly well with like some Trick Room modes. A really coul one is regular Ursaluna, because you can enable it with like obviously getting up the Trick Room, and then you can like spam Wide Guard to allow it to click things like Earthquake. But also you can just pair it up with things like Facade and Headlong Rush. Because then it's like, okay, like are they gonna like Wide Guard Earthquake, or are they just gonna go for like a Facade plus like Moonguy's Beam, right? Like really, really good, yeah. Of course, you know, some other things, but like Indeedee, we spoke about it before. It gives it a Side Spam mode, another Pokemon that's pretty good in Trick Room. That's also the wrong Indeedee. You should be like Indeedee female here. But yeah, I think Indeedee definitely like fits these teams pretty well. And then honestly, even some like HO options, right? Like again, we talk about things, you know, like Calyrex-Shadow Rider. You kind of really need a way to guarantee like a kill on the Calyrex-Shadow. That goes back to things like the Chi-Yu we were talking about before, right? I think like Choice Scarf Chi-Yu is pretty good. Honestly, like you could even go non-Choice Scarf Chi-Yu because of Lunala having Trick Room. You could even do the set that we actually saw at EUIC, which was this one here, the Iron Ball strategy, right? Because you can go like Iron Ball with Quiet Nature 0 speed, and then all of a sudden you actually underspeed things like Ursaluna in Trick Room, which is kind of nutty. Because obviously it would halve that, which would then put you to 47, which is, yeah, like 1 point slower than the Ursalunas and like Iron Hand. Actually, it might be 2 points slower. I forget the exact numbers off the top of my head, but yeah, it allows you to underspeed them in Trick Room, which is kind of nutty. And because of that, you can also just go like Modest and just like run something like this and deal like a lot of damage, which I do think is like pretty cool as well. But yeah, obviously other dark types, of course, things like Urshifu is pretty good. Having like a secondary form of speed control as well is not bad, right? So you can have things like Tornadus and Whimsicott. Even things like Booster Energy, Icy Wind, Flutter Mane, I think is pretty good. And yeah, just Pokemon that kind of enable it to play both in Trick Room and Tailwind, I do think is very strong. Now, the final mon I want to talk about today is probably the king of weather so far in Generation 9, and that's Groudon. Now, Groudon is a very, very good Pokemon for the simple fact that it sets up the sun, and right now, there really isn't any other weather that has as many abuses as sun does. Rain feels good, but like a lot of the rain abuses right now are things like just water types in general, right? Obviously things like Urshifu, even Archaladon's like pretty good in it right now. But there's really no like big swift swimmers, right? Basculegion's not that good. Ludi's not that good, right? Like there's no real like big options, right? Same with Sand, right? Sand's got, you know, Drill, Lycanroc, that's it. Like where's the Draco Vicious, yeah? And then even Snow, like Snow right now is like its best results are coming with things like, you know, with Articuno or even Kyurem White in the current format. But yeah, like none are as good as Groudon with like things like Flutter Mane, Raging Bolt, right? Like Flutter Mane's incredibly good. Raging Bolt's incredibly good, right? Even some of the fire types, right? We're seeing things like Ogerpon, Flame, and Sun doing a lot of work. Chiyu, a personal favorite of mine, is also really, really good, right? It gives the Groudon a matchup into Calyrex-Shadow Rider, while also having just like a really powerful fire type in the Sun, yeah? Like a lot of really, really good options. I'll quickly like throw it on here as well. Rillaboom is another fantastic option to pair with it, just simply because Groudon can have issues with Pokemon like Kyogre. But in terms of sets on Groudon, right, I think there are two main ones. I'm personally a big fan of the Clear Amulet. I think Clear Amulet just makes the Incineroar matchup incredibly easy, especially like when you have things like Protect, because you just go like Protect turn 1, and then you just fire off like a massive Precipice Blade turn 2 with max attack, which is like very, very nice. Of course, we're getting up the Sun, and I do think Terra Fire is actually a pretty good defensive Terra for this Pokemon. You're normally weak to Grass and to Ice, so giving yourself like a defensive mode into those is very, very good. And of course, you get access to things like Heat Crash, which definitely are pretty nice, right? You could also run like Fire Punch if you want like a little more consistency, and not have to worry about the damage fluctuating. I'm also like a really big fan of Swords Dance on this set as well. You could also opt for things like Bulk Up as well if you really, really wanted. But the other set as well I do think is really good is the Assault Vest set. Now, on the Assault Vest set, obviously we can't run these two moves here. You probably do want something like Heat Crash, I would say. But this Pokemon also gets a lot of like different coverage moves, right? I think both Crunch and Shadow Claw are obviously really good right now because of Cali. We have other options as well, things like, you know, Heavy Slam and Rock Slide. I think Rock Slide is definitely really interesting. That's Rock Blast. Rock Slide's very interesting because like how it enables it to, you know, hit some of the flying Pokemon. Especially if Rayquaza does see like a little bit of play. I do think Rock Slide's pretty good. But I guess if Ray also sees play, then Dragon Claw obviously is also like pretty damn good, right? But yeah, I think what Groudon really needs to kind of like enable this Pokemon is just one, Sun abusers, so strong fire types, and you know, some of these photosynthesis Pokemon. And two, also Chlorophyll, right? There are other Pokemon as well, I think that pair up really well with it. Mons like Venusaur are pretty good. I'll give you guys like one of the hidden texts that one of the guys in the Discord mentioned, which by the way, if you're not in the Discord, go check it out. But it was this one here. It's the Sandy Shocks Forbidden Tech, right? So we have Sandy Shocks here, right? And everyone knows, when it comes to Groudon, the last thing you want to do is miss a fucking Precipice Blades, right? This move being 85% accurate, it sucks, yeah, it sucks. How do we fix this accuracy issue, right? Obviously, there's things like Hydrapple, yeah, but we're not running Hydrapple. We want a good Pokemon, yeah? So how do we fix it? Well, you see this guy here, Sandy Shocks, right? You just go like a Timid Nature, you know, it feels pretty damn good, man. Does he always get that? No, he doesn't. Okay, that's fine. You know, he gets the Speed Booster, yeah, coming off the Photosynthesis. And then he has this move called Gravity. Basically, raising the accuracy by a bunch, which essentially means Groudon in Gravity just won't miss its Precipice Blades anymore, which I think is pretty damn pog. But then you got the question of like, well, you know, one of the issues, like, yeah, it's cool, but Groudon's like a pretty slow mon, blah, blah, blah. You can like run a little bit of speed on this guy, run him up to say like 128. And then you can just go like Sandy Shocks, Electro Web. Right? And it's like, oh shit, now I got some speed control. Now I'm basically outspeeding everything that isn't like Jolly, you know, sorry, like Jolly GM Power Plus, right? So the Flutter Manes and all that kind of stuff, right? You know, if they're all going like Timid Jolly, Groudon, Miraidon, you know, Calyrex-Shadow, all that kind of stuff, right? All of a sudden, you know, they're slower than this. But then you also have the option, right, of just saying like, well, I'm playing like a Clear Amulet set with Protect. I'm just going to go Protect, Electro Web, and then Electro Web again, and then I can hit them, right? Which I do think is really, really cool. But the other Forbidden Tech here as well is Gravity plus Sleep Powder, everyone's favorite. So between Venusaur and Sandy Shocks, you have like quite a lot of speed control. Obviously between Chlorophyll and the speed booster coming out of this, and then of course Electro Web. But then yeah, again, Gravity just into Sleep Powder is pretty pog, right? Because you could probably stagger it, right? Because what would that go up to? That would go up to, what's that, 84? So 72, 30, 254, I think it is. No, 252, I think it is. Like 252. So if it's like 252, then you could like stagger it, right? To be like something like that, maybe. To go to like 250. Something like that. And then you can just go like Modest Max here and then just like pump a little bit into defenses or whatever, right? And then all of a sudden, you know, your Venusaur is like, you know, sleep powdering, right? But then he's also going to like Terrify, Weather Balls, right? Energy Ball, all that kind of stuff. Earth Power. Probably don't need Earth Power simply because you would have Sandy and Groudon. But yeah, I definitely think that's like a really, really cool tech. And yeah, I'm like a massive fan of Groudon and Sun in the current metagame. I think it's like really, really good. But in terms of like the spreads normally, I think going for something like that 212 to 214 range is like pretty nice. Again, you're going to find these issues where how do people start speed creeping, right? Because you probably want to try to outspeed the opposing Terapagos, right? And so because of that, you might even start seeing people go Groudon like 216, 218, whatever it might be. Again, obviously it depends. Like, do you have like a Fluttermane on the team with Icy Wind and all that kind of stuff? But I'm just like a massive fan of going like 256, pumping like, you know, put whatever speed you want in, max HP, and then at that point kind of just like pumping into your Spadef. Because really that's kind of what you need to decide, right? Like this mon's worst stat is definitely its Spadef stat. So how much speed do you want and how much do you want to put into, you know, your Spadef? Because like I've seen people just run something like this, right, and pump it to Spadef, which I still think is pretty good. But again, I'm just a big fan of making sure my Groudon always goes first, right? But again, if you want to run something like Assault Vest, like if you were like running Assault Vest, you could honestly just run something like this. Probably drop that down one, bump that up there, and then kind of just like pump into speed, right? And that'd probably be fine with Assault Vest. You could even run more attack on AV as well if you wanted, simply because you're obviously, yeah, you're missing the Clear Amulet saving your attack. But yeah, Groudon, just another really, really good one, guys. But anyway, I've been like rambling on for like over half an hour at this point. So I guess, yeah, let me know what you guys think of these 5 Pokemon. I definitely think they're probably the 5 best Pokemon right now. With definitely some honorable mentions out there being things like the Ice Rider. Kyogre is also seeing play. Now it's like kind of rising up. Even Ray's kind of rising up slowly. I think even Zacian won a tournament recently. There was another really rogue legend that just won a tournament as well. I can't think of it off the top of my head. But yeah, there's a lot of Pokemon. They're all getting good results, but I do think these are probably the 5 best right now. But yeah, anyway, guys, let me know down below what you think. And yeah, I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.